You know what? I enjoyed season 1 of Loki. Daring to be dull isn't something I'd ever thought I would applaud, but I don't know, I was just in the right brain space for the first 2 episodes. I was happy to zone out and just hang out in the Bureau of Balance. I mean the RIPD. I mean the ITV. I mean the TVA. I actually really enjoyed the aesthetics and quirks of the organization, which I think is where it lost some people because we get very entrenched in it very quickly. It's actually shocking how much of this show is just people sitting around and talking, but for me this was saved by Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. Seeing them bounce off each other, it was great, and I made so many jokes about Mobius showing his strip, even I got sick of it. However, I can see how a lot of this walking and talking and sitting and talking in front of basically Star Wars prequel windows, as in green screen fake shit, I could see how it might be exhausting to some. It wasn't really a problem for me though. The only main problem that runs throughout the whole season for me is the nerfing of Loki. Like, why is the god of lies so bad at lying? Every single time he opens his mouth to lie, he's got this fucking shit-eating grin, and it's so telegraphed. It's like the show feels like it needs to communicate to us, the viewers, that he is lying for some reason, even though it would actually be fine if we were taken in by the lie, and then it's turned on its head. And I know this is Loki just after the Avengers, where he gets swung around by the Hulk, some of the air is let out of the balloon, and he's not the most menacing villain throughout all of Marvel, but he is at least an Avenger at one point, and the show gives you the impression that any of the Avengers could take him on, even Hawkeye. And really, that's fine as well if you want to take him down a few pegs for the sake of character development. That's great. But the show keeps kind of acting like he's this smart, plotting, schemes within schemes guy, while everything that happens in the show proves the exact opposite. I mean, just make him good at lying for a start. I know you have to take his magic away, but he could still be a clever guy. The first episode goes into how he's been lying to himself, how he's always playing a part. And that is pretty interesting. But then they make him really bad at playing any other part throughout the whole season. Like when he says something that's just not true, he's overacting cartoonishly. Probably the worst of this is in episode 3, which is just a clusterfuck anyway. Like, are we supposed to think he's suicidal here? After episodes 1 and 2, I don't really think that, but it's the only explanation for his bonkers behavior, where he chooses to get drunk and destroy the one tool they had to escape certain doom. It's like he knows he's in episode 3 of a 6-episode season, so there's no way he's gonna die. But if you think into that moment when he's on this moon that's about to crash into a planet and everyone's about to die and he has a data pad or whatever that can save his life and he just gets drunk and gets it destroyed. It's their one tool to escape certain doom. And the only reason they get out of it is that they get horny. And so they're beamed back to the ship. I know there's points behind this, how Sylvie and him are better when they work together, but they could at least be slightly competent on their own. Sylvie, as well, is really competent as long as she's a shadowy villain, but then as she kind of becomes a protagonist, she's much less competent. Which sounds familiar, doesn't it? I would love to watch a show about a sneaky schemer who outthinks his opponents, and the show goes out of its way to show that that's not Loki. He never has a plan.
How do I look?
Like someone with a shit plan.
It's a great plan.
It makes fun of Loki, and again, that's fine to a point if we're looking for growth. But while his friendship with Mobius and relationship with Sylvie work for the most part, maybe they're a bit underdeveloped, they do justify his growth as a character to me. But the show only has him be competent in small glimpses when convenient, which takes a lot of the interest out of the character. I'd rather have someone who's really good at something fail than someone who's bad and keep saying they're a god and keep saying they're good, and then it's only because they're in certain situations that they end up with a benefit at the end. I watched Loki season 1 all in one go, which I think was to my benefit. The episodes that dragged didn't really drag me down, I just shrugged and moved on. And as for the overall mystery of the show, I did enjoy seeing the space lizards that controlled everything. I literally couldn't stop laughing when they first appeared, which does make sense because they're meant to be hokey, over-the-top figureheads. I liked seeing them try to figure out what was going on, though Mobius's motivation to get to the bottom of who's running the TVA was a lot more compelling than Loki's, given that he's had his entire life that he doesn't even know about stolen, whereas Loki's just been locked up for a few months. The fact that the TVA turned out to be evil, it's fine. It's kind of an overused trope. I mean, I can't believe that this fascist organization that dictates everything through their own inherent dogma that they refuse to explain, they were bad the whole time. It does make sense, but it's also something that happens quite quickly. If we'd had a few sort of monster of the week type episodes where we gave the characters a bit of chance to get to know each other and to explore the rules of the TVA, because we basically get them explained to us in infomercials and such that have quite a... They're pretty good looking. I do enjoy them. I'm not complaining, but this is a visual medium. We could actually have an episode where they learn about these rules by experiencing them. And this is the multiverse, right? You have all these different nexuses being created all of the time. So maybe you could go to some interesting point in the past and explore a scenario from What If and have them try to resolve that. I know they need to motor into the main plot of finding Sylvie and everything, but it would have given the characters a chance to get to know each other a bit better. It could have given a bit of motivation for why the TVA does what it does, because right now we never really get that. I'll admit that before I knew about Kang and everything, I did have a theory that the person behind the TVA was a Loki variant, because though he claims to be a god of chaos, Loki is all about control, and he has his little speech about why he needs to be in charge of everything to take away the pain of choice from people, and that just sounds like what the shadowy figure behind the TVA is all about. So I kind of expected Loki to meet another one of himself at that point, but no, it wasn't him. That was just a way to set up how his ideology is actually kind of in line with the TVA. His problem is more that he's not the one in charge, and we need to set this up so he's in opposition to Sylvie towards the end, so there can be a big moral dilemma. Even though I kind of feel like they could have killed him either way, right? And then Loki could have gotten the power if he wanted. They could have fought after he was dead. As far as Sylvie, I was on board with her mostly. She kind of suffers from the same problem as Loki in that she's incredibly capable as long as she's a villain, but then she becomes nerfed. I'd say she doesn't necessarily have an opportunity to bring the same gravitas that the Loki character does, because she's someone who's supposed to have been on the run all her life. She practically has no life experience, or she's never had a friend, so all of her interactions are a little bit basic, and she comes off a bit one-dimensional at the very start, but I am interested to see where they'll bring her now that she has achieved her life's goal of bringing down the TVA, because there is potential there. So for the future, supposedly Loki will appear in upcoming films. We're not sure. Doctor Strange. There's also Ant-Man and the Wasp. All of this will involve Kang, multiverses, Quantumania, etc. And you know what? If nothing else, I do appreciate how, unlike Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which felt like it existed completely separately of the film franchise, these television shows are woven into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in a way that we've not really seen before. I guess except the Animatrix. These shows feel more like bridges between films than unneeded prequels, but I think there is some credence to what people are saying, that season 1 of Loki felt like it was setting stuff up more than actually delivering. Hopefully it will deliver though, whether that's in combination with films or in the upcoming season 2. However you feel about the show, it does move the whole Marvel franchise into a new era, in that it's introducing a lot of this multiversal stuff that is clearly going to be central to the saga that we're now entering. This might potentially be a can of worms. I could see how it might lower the stakes, as you can't really ever trust anyone's death as permanent. Any character could just come back as a different version of themselves. But at the same time, they handled the time travel in the Infinity Saga surprisingly well. There were some rules and limitations that made it feel like there were concrete stakes, and I could see that happening here as well. On a final note, I've seen a lot of theories about how Kang and He Who Remains and Wanda are maybe connected, as in her rebirth in WandaVision as the Red Witch might have somehow caused the threshold where things are now no longer within He Who Remains' knowledge and control. This feels irrelevant to me because he brought Sylvie and Loki there to give up control, so of course there would be a threshold where he had chosen to give up that control. And I think people might be overthinking this, but maybe I'm underthinking it. Could be the case. What do you think? Does this bode well for the next saga of Marvel storytelling? Are you excited for Season 2 multiversal stuff? Do you feel like Season 1 delivered? I loved the episode with all the Lokis, but what did you think? Let us know, subscribe, and check out our podcast at showswhatyouknow.com.